Well, good morning. It's good to be with you this morning. It is Monday morning, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day today. And I'm so excited to be with you. I hope you had a great weekend. And let's see. I had a great weekend. It was really, really good. Every morning, it seemed like it was just absolutely stunningly beautiful to be outside, to sit outside. Actually, in the evenings too. Last night, sitting outside as the sun was going down, it was just, oh my goodness, so beautiful. I hope you get a chance to just be outside in the morning and the evening when God does his amazing things, which is giving us life and breath and beauty of nature and all that sort of thing. Let's see. We have a couple No, we have no birthdays today. Sorry, no birthdays today. I understand we have one tomorrow that I saw on the list. So we have one birthday tomorrow, but we don't have any today. I was kind of a little bit depressed on Friday about all about the reporting of the COVID numbers and all that sort of thing. And there's just a couple things I'd like to do. First is I want to go to the Arizona Department of Health Services. So bear with me a little bit. We're just going to go there. This is azdhs.gov, and it's coronavirus. And then there's all these little tabs that you can pick. And the one that I want to pick right now is called hospitalizations. So I'm just going to click on that. We're going to go down. We're going to look at hospitalizations. So as you'll notice, hospitalizations were at its maximum on June 29th, and as they're coming down, right? So the latest data we have on this chart is July 24th, which would have been Friday. There were 13 hospitalizations. Now, this all looks great. And I've been reporting for, 2 or 3 weeks about how it's wonderful. Well, since May 29th. Because if you think about it, these numbers should have shot up. They should be shooting up because they had the state of Arizona was released. And so since they were released, the numbers, I was watching them because as they were released, it's not going to level off, but they did level off, which is just fascinating. And I was really, really excited about that. And then I had somebody tell me that the numbers are all wrong. Well, I think I know why. And it's actually on this chart. If you go down and look, it says this is as of 7/26, but what does this say here? This is the percentage of COVID-19 cases with missing hospitalization status, which is 62%. Percentage of COVID-19 cases with missing hospitalization status. So I think what that means is that when they report a COVID case, there's probably a form they have to fill out where are they hospitalized or are they not hospitalized? And apparently a large chunk, 62%, are not giving the data about whether or not they're hospitalized. Okay, so that means that the data is incomplete. But the one that I still look at, if I go back to the chart, is COVID-19 deaths. And COVID-19 deaths, if we go down there, Pima County, well, no, this is statewide. The last time it was reported was 2 deaths. 2 deaths in all of Pima County. And the height was 80 deaths were being reported today. So these are good numbers. And this is as of 7/26. Now, it does say that recent deaths may not be reported. So it's possible that deaths in the last 7 to 10 days, 4 to 7 days may not be reported. But the peak was July 7th. We are 4 weeks after the peak. So I think all of this stuff here, it's not going up. Even if it's leveling off, that's good. But not going up and coming down, that's even better because these viruses grow exponentially. One person infects 1.2 people, and pretty soon, if they infect 1.2, you just look at the law of exponential growth, and pretty soon the whole world gets infected. But if it's less than 1, if you can get that, there's a number that they call, which is called the R number, the reproducibility number. They call it the R naught. If that just is even slightly less than 1, then what you're going to see is that we always go down. And the numbers that I'm seeing showing that the R naught is less than 1 for the state of Arizona, which means we're past the peak, at least with the stuff that we're doing now. Well, what are the stuff that we're doing now? Well, we're not meeting in large groups. Obviously, groups over 50 are still, I believe, forbidden. Schools will start to be opening up. The big question is whether schools are going to be a problem, but all the research, this is across the world, show that 2 things. One is that children don't transmit it, and 2 is that children don't get it. So if that's the case and we start opening up schools, then we have to start to see if schools are causing a problem with the R naught going up. But across the world where they've opened up schools, that hasn't been the case. So I know that here in the state of Arizona, the governor has said that he's leaving it to each school district to determine when they want to open up, but no sooner than August 17th. So once the schools start opening up, those that will, and that might be the smaller school districts or the school districts that feel comfortable opening up, then we can check the R naught there. And then after that, are there other things that can open up? So we'll just have to see. And the other thing is that the virus, the vaccines that we've come up with, not we, I use the world. This is a global we. This is a global pandemic. There are global we's working on this. Not me. I have nothing to do with it. Of course, right? That's obvious. But there are 5, I understand, candidate vaccines that are actually going into phase 3 trial. One of them, I believe, goes this week. The one by Moderna. They're going to have 30,000 people try the vaccine. And it won't be long before we see whether or not they have a less reduction. The problem may be, I didn't even think about this until just now, but if we're past the peak and nobody is sick anymore, then it might be hard to differentiate between vaccine, no vaccine, because nobody's getting sick. So we have to find populations that are in hot spots in order to test the vaccine. And even with that, it might be hard to really understand, whether or not the vaccine works. So that'll take brains that are really big to think about it, computer programs that are testing all this and that sort of thing. But the bottom line is that I still believe the numbers are pretty good. Here's another article I just want to point out to you. This is as of 11 hours ago, Arizona Business Magazine. Now, what does this say? COVID-19 cases in Arizona hit 162,000. 51% of those COVID cases have come in July. Confirmed COVID-19 cases in Arizona reached 162,000 on Sunday, July 26th, an increase of 1973 from the previous day, and the number of deaths reached 3,305 after an increase of 19 new deaths from the previous day, according to the Arizona Department of Health Services. So this 19 deaths is this, let's see, is it going to show up here? Yeah, this 19 deaths. But these are people that died with COVID. I believe these are people that died from COVID. Okay, that makes sense? So you can die with COVID or you can die from COVID, I think. I think that's why this 19 is different from this 2. It's the only thing that makes sense. So let's go back to our article. The total number of COVID cases in Arizona since the start of the pandemic, blah, 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 blah. But here's the interesting thing, is that half of the people reported tested positive for COVID, the new COVID cases, has come in July. Half of them. Well, let's go back to our chart. If half of them have come in July, then where are the deaths, right? July 1st, here. So what they're saying is that from here to here, that's half, and the other half is here. But it's going down. It's going down. If half of it happened in July, then we're obviously seeing something change about the whole COVID thing. Something about it has changed. Either it's no longer as bad as it was. We've learned how to treat it better. For whatever reason, praise be to God, the fact that the number of cases is increased hasn't resulted in the number of hospitalizations and deaths increasing. That is probably the biggest news that nobody in the media seems to be reporting. I don't know why. It is, there have been several news articles over the last 2 weeks that I've come across that says, very strange that cases are going up, but deaths and hospitalizations are going down. So I know that I'm not the only one that has noticed this, but for some reason, the major national news media streams and even our local news media streams hasn't picked up on that story. But they're late to the game. When they pick up on this story, it'll be very, very interesting. So I guess the bottom line is that over the weekend, as I looked at this, I still have hope now, where I was very depressed on Friday because I thought that the numbers were all wrong. But unless we have people purposely skewing the numbers for whatever their agenda is. I don't even know how you'd skew the numbers. Okay, I can see one, and that is, I've heard that if you're hospitalized with COVID, then you die of COVID, the hospitals get more money for that. So you'd think it'd be skewed in the direction of trying to get more cases of COVID in the hospital, but we're seeing the exact opposite. So even if but there may be other skews out there. I don't know what the other skews would be. You can't. The thing with skewing. How much time do I have? Oh, I'm covering up my clock. Sorry. We got 1 minute. So the thing with skewing data is you just never know what the impact of that would be, right? You think you're misreporting the data and it's going to have an effect X, but it could have, in the big picture, affects Y, Z, A, B, C, D, and E. So most good scientists will never, ever skew the data because you just don't know what the impact of that is. And plus, you get one data point wrong. You start skewing one data point, and then all of a sudden, you have to throw away the whole data set, right? Because it's inaccurate. You can't make decisions on inaccurate data. It's just, no scientist does that. You have to have the best data set that you possibly can. All right, so I guess that's enough for that. We are in the book of Genesis 19. We're just going to talk a little bit about Lot. When we left Lot, if you'll remember, the stranger came to Lot and pulled Lot out of this land of Zoar, and then they destroyed the city. And I just want to pick up this story there because there's one little part of this that is just really interesting. Maybe we'll start at verse 16, okay? So this is Genesis 19, verse 16. When he hesitated, this is Lot. So Lot is in his house. The men are around him, and he doesn't want to leave. The men, the two angels, grasped Lot's hand and the hands of his wife and his two daughters, and he led them safely out of the city. For the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives, don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee in the mountains, or you'll be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life, but I can't flee to the mountains." I think it's because he's maybe a little bit too old. He can't flee. "This disaster will overtake me and I'll die. Look, here's a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it, that my life will be spared." We'll continue on. He said to him, the angel, "Very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." And that is why the town is called Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So, Abraham leaves by these men. They say, go up into the mountain. Abraham says, I can't get into the mountain. It's too high for me. I can only go as fast as I can go. But here's a city right here. Just don't destroy that city. Let me be in that city. And they said, fine, go to that city. We won't destroy that city. But don't look back. So Lot is able to make it to the city of Zoar. They destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And then Lot's wife looks back. And she is overtaken. She's turned into a pillar of salt. Now, this is just really, really interesting. Why would they turn her into a pillar of salt for looking back? And, you could say, well, they turned her into a pillar of salt because she looked back. Or you could say that she hesitated. Lot and his two daughters didn't hesitate. They continued on. But she stopped, she turned around, she looked at the city, and she happened to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and it was a pillar of salt. But for whatever reason, she looked back, and that's what destroyed her. And I guess I wanted to just spend a little bit of time, since we are in this pandemic, using this as kind of an analogy or a metaphor for what it's going to be like when we get out of this thing. Because there are a lot of businesses, there's lots of operations, there's lots of people trying to figure out what is it going to be like when we move. I kind of talked about this a little bit last week, but people who, look at human beings and civilizations have noticed that we always move forward, and sometimes we make leaps forward. And we make leaps forward because of two things. One is that there's a new technology that kind of propels us forward. And the other is there's something in the world that happens that causes us to use that new technology in a new way and to really take the world a leap forward. The last major time this happened was probably in the Great Reformation. If you'll remember, the Gutenberg press preceded the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation in Europe, by about 50 years, right? Gutenberg invented the press. And the press was being used, but it was really not used that much. People didn't have a need for books, right? They had lived all their life without having books. So the vast majority of people were illiterate, right? Because there were no books to read. So the vast majority of people are illiterate at the time. And so why would you learn? You could live perfectly fine without literacy. But the Gutenberg press allowed books to be available all the time. And then you started to see people saying, well, if books are available all the time, then let's learn to read. And so you had this whole generation after the Gutenberg press of people learning how to read. Well, 50 years later, now you have a whole bunch of people that are now literate, and you have the printing press, and now that sparked the Reformation. And I know that Martin Luther was at the head of it, and he's given a lot of credit for the Reformation because of fighting Rome and the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Church. But it was inevitable. He's the guy we pin on, but it really was a whole confluence of things that created the Reformation. Because once you had books and literate people, books that weren't too expensive and literate people, now you have things to anchor onto. You can create facts, and you can put the facts in the book. And people can look at the facts and say, yeah, that is a true fact. And we're not even going to make books unless they have facts. And it created a whole reformation. It created a renaissance of activity that brought us out of the Dark Ages into the age that we're in now. That is all because of Gutenberg's press, the literacy and the courage of Luther to stand up to one of the largest institutions in the world. now we are in a different Reformation. And the different Reformation is we now live in the digital era. We live in an era. My first computer, my first desktop computer I had on my desk in our house in Phoenix in 1987 or 88. Before that, you didn't have a desktop computer. Nobody had computers. You had calculators, right? But you didn't have computers. You certainly didn't have access to the internet. That happened about 10 years later. So now you get desktop computers, you get access to the internet, and now you have a generation of people that have never known life without computers and access to the internet. And I'm always amazed. I think that something that's put on a web page is probably true or correct because somebody took the time and put it on a web page, right? It's on Wikipedia, so I know it's true. And I know in the deep of my head that it may be not true, but the digital natives, the people that have grown up with the internet, they can just tell what's true and what's not true, because they're native into this generation. They, whatever it is, they have like this newfound ability to find information and locate information that is harder for me. They're just natives in this thing, and they've grown up in a world. We've grown up in a world with books. They've grown up in a world with everything at their fingertips, and this whole pandemic has forced all of us to be digital natives, and they have been waiting for us, being the older generation, to get on board with the fact that this is a great new technology that can be used for all sorts of good. Obviously it can be used for bad too, but it's a technology that's just going to revolutionize everything in the world. And we haven't even begun to see what that revolution is going to look like. We are now at the moment, the precipice where this is going to happen. And I believe that we need to look forward, right? Whatever it was that was behind us in business, in schooling, in education, in food delivery, in growing in our faith, everything that we knew beforehand is going to change. And it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful change. I believe that, remember, it all goes back to Genesis 1, where Jesus said, Jesus, because he was there at creation, where God said to Adam, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. So we've been doing that since the beginning of time. And subduing the earth is what we're created for. God created this wonderful earth for us to learn and understand. If you'd have told somebody 200 years ago that you could get from LA to New York in 2 hours or 3 hours, they would have put you in an insane asylum. But the fact is, today we can do that. With the Concorde, we could do it. We've been able to do it for 50 years. The world has it is amazing how the world is progressing. And I believe that it will continue to progress, and we'll continue to find out things that we didn't know before. And the future is not bleak at all. The future is wonderful. The future is fantastic. What holds back the future from being fantastic is when institutions hold on to the past and never look to the future. Because you have to really, really, really understand every institution. Like, let's take a school. Like, what's the purpose of a school? It's like, well, to give kids an education. Well, why do kids need an education? Well, kids need to have an education to navigate life, right? Because life has to be navigated. But the stuff that we teach in school today is basically information and facts, right? And I think digital natives, they've got they don't need facts. They've had the facts from the moment they were born. What digital natives need is the ability to access those facts in the way that it's necessary. But how are we going to use that facts? How are we going to process those facts? How are we going to join together in teamwork to use the gifts that I have. Like some people are apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some shepherds, some teachers. How are we all going to gather together in teams and forward things with the facts that we have available so that we can continue subduing the earth, so that I can live my life and navigate the world around me. So obviously the things that we're teaching in school are going to change. I mean, that's just the simple way to say it. And if you don't change, if you stop and you look back and say, I miss the old way, you're going to get turned into a pillar of salt, metaphorically speaking. All right. But schools, probably the biggest institution to change. Businesses have already, businesses have to change because they're driven by market economics, and somebody's going to change, and the rest of it is going to see that was a great change. They're going to move forward. But large institutions like schooling here in the United States, which is heavily funded by all of us, they have a slow time to change. And so they're going to be on the slow path to this. I'm sorry. But I will tell you this. There are revolutionary people that will see that the change is inevitable and the future is wonderful, and we got to be prepared for the future, and we've got to educate our kids for the future. We've got to teach them what they need to know, and provide the safe space for them to be educated for the purpose of navigating their future, right? A future of which is unknown. Now, I've known about this. The thing that really kind of hit me was I'm teaching confirmation at our church and telling the kids about Luther's small catechism and all that. But the questions they're asking are not questions that are necessarily covered in Luther's small catechism. They are much deeper, powerful questions that I can't even understand because I'm not digital natives, right? But they are. And so it made me think, instead of teaching them facts and information, what I need to teach them is how to prepare themselves as a Christian to navigate this new future that God has prepared for them, so that their faith increases over time and they don't start to decrease their faith over time. I mean, those are the things that are really, really, really going to help them navigate their future. And the big questions that they have, obviously, are the questions that everybody's had. Is there a God? And the truth is, God will never, ever reveal that there is a God or that there isn't a God. He always has to leave room for faith. He always has to have the shield just a little bit where you can't know, that it always takes faith to believe that there is a God. And so there is no, it's like right on the line, right? You can either say, yeah, there is a God, or there's absolutely no God. He always leaves it like right on the line. But once you realize that there is a God, then you can start opening up your mind to the possibilities that there's objective truth, and there is objective beauty, and there's objective ways that we should live in the world because God created it for us to live in. And then you start going down that path and you start building your faith. And it all comes down to whether or not God exists. I mean, that is just the fundamental foundation of everything. If you believe that God exists, then you start to see the world as if it's a God-created, God-blessed, God-loved, God-beautified world. And if you don't believe in God, then you start to see the world in ways that I believe will ultimately harm you, because there is the truth about God at its root form is that God created the world for us to enjoy and to love, and that there's objective stuff that are found in his word and his truth and creation, the natural law and creation and all that sort of thing. If there is no God, then every other institution that you're going to hold on to say this is truth eventually will fail you. I don't care what it is, but every institution outside of God will fail you. And when that failure happens, it can be devastating, which is why belief in God is so wonderful, because God never fails you. The things that He's created that we can hold on to, the truths that we can hold on to, will not fail you, because God never fails. And if you cling to God, that means that your whole existence moving forward has something to cling to that will never fail you. And that's why the first commandment is love God, right? Have God as the center, the hub of the spoke of things in your life, and God will never fail you. Now, churches may fail, right? I mean, relationships may fail. And when I say churches, I'm talking about the institutional churches or gatherings together. The church of Jesus, the church of God that He created, which is the continuation from the Old Testament. But all of His beloved people, that won't fail. But institutions outside of God will always fail. Everything always fails, because we live in a sinful, broken world. So anyway, I guess all that is to say is look forward, right? Whatever we come out of this pandemic, it's going to change. And that change is going to be hard for a lot of people, because there'll be new ways of doing things that are difficult. We don't understand. We can't comprehend it. We have to learn new stuff. The comfortable of the old is just going to be very difficult. But if you can embrace the new things that may come out of this in every aspect of our life, I believe that the world in the future will be much, 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 much better. And we will subdue some things that we don't understand today. I think most of them that we should subdue are things that deal with how we can create in our life relationships and people and love that fill us with joy every day, right? How can we wake up in the morning and go outside and see the sunrise, be filled with God's love, know of the people that we have close to us, that love us, that care for us, that understand us exactly how we are? How are we going to grow in our faith that day? How are we going to live our life pleasing to God? How are we going to serve, be the hands and feet of God around us? And whatever technology or whatever is available, that command is still there. And it is a beautiful command, and it is a beautiful life. And I don't care who you are, this world is beautiful and the future is bright. And I know there's a lot of, the last point I'll make is this. When we had the Gutenberg Press and then you had the Reformation, you had what's called the 30 Years' War in Europe. And it was devastating. It ripped things apart like crazy. We are now in the midst, I believe, of another war or battle. And you may think it's because of certain things, but at its root, I believe that all the stuff that's going along right now is because we are changing to a new world. And the old world and the new world will always conflict. And so there's going to be a period of time of conflict. But we will get through it. And once we do, there will be a period of renaissance, unlike I think we've ever seen ever. And that human beings will live lives that are absolutely amazingly filled with joy and love and happiness and fruitfulness and peace and love. And I believe the future, like for my two grandchildren, Dakota and Izzy, I think their future is just going to be fantastic, for a whole bunch of reasons, but mostly because God is still in charge. He's on the throne. So that's a little bit waxing poetic today. Thanks for joining me. Would you join me in prayer? Gracious God, thank you for the world that you've created. Thank you for the future that I know that you are in charge of, that is not bleak, but filled with you. And I pray, Lord, that you watch over all of us until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so that I just wanted to talk a little bit about Lot's wife and looking forward, because we always have to look forward. So God's blessings to you. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care and have a great day. Bye.